Well, shooters and reloaders out there, Fortune Cookie 45 LC coming to the hot lead zone. And let's turn this off because never know about copyright problems, right? So we'll just turn that off. Now the subject of today's video is the Mauser rifle. Now some people call it the Mauser, but it really doesn't matter. Mauser, Leopold, Hornady, all these things really don't matter because we know what we're talking about. The Mauser came about back in the 1890s, the late 1890s, when smokeless powder came along, and the capability and potential of smokeless powder caused new designs to be made and stronger, and so that's where this bolt action Mauser came in. Well, this video is not to be a history video on the Mauser, but rather, what about the Mauser design is it that makes it still very popular today for sporting rifles and this kind of thing? Now, for military, of course, is way obsolete, although it was used up until the 1970s in some skirmishes around the world. Now, of course, the military application of snipers still makes use of a lot of bolt action designs. And this might be either Mauser or the other design, which is the push feed design. Bolt actions are still used by the military. But for the regular use by the military, the bolt actions are no longer in vogue. Anyway, this action, besides being very strong and reliable and robust, also it's the Mauser bolt. Because you see, there's two different kinds, different kinds of bolts. One is your Mauser bolt, and the other is your push round bolt. And the push round feed bolt is like your Remington Model 700 and some Winchester Model 70s. But the Ruger Model 77s were always Mauser type of actions and Mauser type of bolts. At any rate, what this bolt features is your Mauser claw extractor. And this extractor is huge, very reliable and robust. What happens is it's controlled round because the cartridge comes out of the magazine and it's grabbed by the Mauser extractor, and that actually holds that cartridge right against the bolt face so that when you close the bolt, it gives you a straight direct feed into the chamber of the rifle. And after a round is fired, when you extract, you also get the very important reliable extraction caused by this robust extractor. So big game hunters that are going after dangerous game like Cape buffalo, lion, elephant, this kind of thing, they prefer the Mauser type of bolt if they're going to use a bolt action. Now, the ejector is also important to make a note of, and that is in the Mauser design, the ejector is not part of the bolt, but rather part of the action. So that when a round is extracted and pulled back, the ejector slides through this little slot here, and then bumps the case head and makes the empty fly out of the action. Now, the nice thing about this is if you go ahead and work your bolt very gently, you can get the round to stay in the ejection port so you can take it out yourself. Or if you just barely nudge it back, the round actually comes out and just falls right next to the rifle. And if you're forceful with it, then it comes out farther. Now with the push feed design, the bolt never captures the cartridge, but rather pushes the round out of the magazine, and then the spring of the magazine straightens the round up, and then by gravity feed, this bolt shoves the round into the chamber. And that's when the extractor, which is a little piece of metal that goes over the rim, grabs the rim, and then when you extract, it pulls it out. But the thing about the push round feed is that you have the ejector is a plunger that's in the bolt face itself. And that plunger is always tensioning the cartridge. As soon as you go ahead and close the action, that ejector is tensioned. Now when you extract, as the round comes out of the chamber, that plunger is pushing the round sideways. And so when you open the action on a Remington Model 700, you'll notice that as you pull that bolt back and the case is seen, that case is already under spring tension and is pushing right against the side of the receiver. As soon as the case mouth clears that receiver, that spring just pops that case out. And you don't have the ability to control the amount of ejection. It just pops it out very forcefully. Same thing happens with loaded rounds. As soon as the bullet tip clears this port, the round flips out of the action. With this one, you can make them fall right next to the rifle if you want to, but just by working it more slowly. So that's the Mauser type of design. And the Mauser design also has a 3-position safety, so that you have one position where the rifle is ready to fire. Never pull the trigger on a gun without checking to see if it's loaded or unloaded, even though you know it's not loaded. So check again. So that this means fire. 4 straight up means that the trigger is on safe, but you can still work the action. And the nice thing about the Mauser is that in the center position, it's sticking up so you can't see the sights. You know it's on safe. Then of course you have full safe, which is on this side, and that locks the action as well as locking the trigger. And this 3-position safety is very popular in sporting rifles today. So you have full safe, you have trigger safe, but open action, and then you have fire. So there is your basic Mauser action, and as to why it is popular today. The thing about the control round feed that's very significant is that if your rifle is not oriented like this, say it's like this, or even like this, you can reliably load and unload your rifle because of the control round feed. With the gravity push feed, it's quite possible that when you're trying to load a round, it just falls out unless you're really fast with it. If it falls out, you've got a situation where your rifle's lost reliability. And this is a criticism of the push round feed. But is it? Really, when you get right down to it, how often do you work your bolt upside down like that? Or even sideways? Doesn't happen as a rule. I can't remember when the last time I had to work the action upside down. So this is a Mauser, available in many variants of the Mauser design, but this design has been taken on in other sporting rifles. For instance, Bill Ruger understood the features of the Mauser that he really appreciated, so he built his Model 77, which is his frontline bolt action rifle, with the Mauser action. You can tell the Mauser design right away because you can see this big extractor, this claw extractor. It runs down the side of the bolt. Giveaway, it's a giveaway that it's a Mauser type design. But the Mauser design in the Ruger Model 77 has been there since the inception. Now, modern Mausers have been improved in the design because the ejector slot is no longer going through the recoil lug. It's been moved so that it's on the bolt face, and that doesn't compromise the strength of the lug. So with your Ruger Model 77, your Winchester claw type design action Model 70s don't have the ejector slot going through the recoil lug. And that's a very good thing. As you've already seen, this is my Winchester Model 70 Safari Express in 4.58 Win Mag, and it has the Mauser bolt. Now, some of the things that we look for in a bolt action is how smooth does the bolt work. And one of the first things that you want to look for in a bolt is that when you draw the bolt back, is there a lot of play, sideways play in the open bolt? Because suppose that you have a lot of wiggle. Well, that causes you to have what's called binding of the bolt, because if you are outside of a certain degree of variation from the center axis, the bolt won't close. It won't work. For instance, if I go sideways with this bolt and try and close it, it's not moving. If I go sideways this way, it binds but it moves. So you don't want a lot of play here. And in fact, your finer actions don't have much play. The Winchester doesn't have much play. The Ruger Model 77 doesn't have much play. The original Mauser has quite a bit of play. Now what happens is you understand the action stroke. So if you try to pull sideways on the bolt, it won't move well. And if you try and go this way, it doesn't move well. But there's a certain range that this bolt will work fine. So the best way to work your bolt is when you open it, that then you're not going to grab that knob, but just use a finger to pull back and let that bolt come back the way it wants to. Then when you close the action, you want to push. You don't want to push this way, because every bolt you try and push to the outside, it will bind immediately, as you see here. If you push down the axis or a little bit toward the inside, toward your own body, you're good as gold. It'll always close well. If you push this way a little bit, it'll work fine. If you push that way a little bit, it won't work well at all. You see? You're asking for trouble. So when you open, use straight pull without deviating the bolt. When you close, just slam it forward. And if anything else, bias that way a little bit and close your action. You're good as gold. That's something to practice in case you're being charged by a Cape Buffalo. So we've already discussed about the controlled round feed, how that might be very advantageous in certain situations. But those situations may not come up. Your push feed type of bolts are the typical Model 700 Remington and your Savage Model 10s and 11s and all of the Savage variants. Those are actually push round feed. And before I get all of the push round fans out there upset, those are fine actions. One of the nice things about the push round actions is that the bolt can actually have a ring where the head of the case is recessed inside the bolt face. And then the bolt goes into the barrel and locks there, so you have another ring of steel there. And then the barrel is surrounded by the receiver, so you have another ring of steel there. You got a lot of strength, whereas you can't have that kind of recessed face with a Mauser type design. So that's one plus for the push round feed fans out there. They're both fine rifles. You just have to pick whichever one you like, you prefer. For dangerous game, you might want to go with a controlled round feed. Well, this video is getting a little long, so the last thing I need to let you all know is whatever type of rifle you have, which is a 3-position safety or a 2-position safety like Remington Model 700s, or Savages have the slider 3-position, the Rugers the 3-position, whatever kind of safety you have, you really have to understand it. And if you have different rifles, you have to know what you're using. That's very important. But also your basic gun handling rules will keep you out of trouble. Best way to go. So whatever rifle you choose, good hunting to you, good shooting to you, and good rifle owning to you. Bye for now.